What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. So today we are welcoming back on repeat guest Eoin Dobbin. Eoin, thanks a million for coming on.
Thanks for having me, bro. Good to be back.
Yeah, this is episode number we were talking about. It's probably episode number 4, I'd say, at this stage, is it?
It is, but it's also episode number 1 that is... No, number 2 that's in person, actually. Because we did the first one ever in person.
It's actually number 3 in person, because we did one in Tenerife in person. We did
one it is,
at your house, yeah. So, first video one, though. So, let's see how that goes. Hopefully there's...
First video one, yeah, that is true. And to be fair, we've got quite a nice setup here. The fire
going.
The backdrop.
Just around Christmas time, so nice, ready to go, I suppose. So come here, what have you been up to the last few months?
Oh man, what have I been up to the last few months? Work, travel, the usual, training.
Nice.
More specific training the last week or two, and will be for the next while. I feel like I've really been exercising this summer as opposed to training. I haven't been maybe doing as much as I could, but I've been keeping fit and healthy and working hard and enjoying life as much as possible. What about you?
Similar enough now. I was in Valencia for the last few months. Before that, then I started the year, I suppose I was in Bali, but I met you in between since I came back. But so same thing, just been focusing on training. Now I actually wanted to ask you, what's your difference between exercise and training? But just been focusing on training, mostly jiu-jitsu, been in the gym a small bit, and then just working as well, working on building the podcast and working on building out the business a small bit more. So it's been a good few months. The months before that now obviously weren't as good, but the last few months have been very good to reset, good to get everything going again, and enjoying the process. What is your difference now between training and exercising?
Man, I'm glad you asked me, because I've thought about this quite a bit over the last few weeks. I've recently started working with a coach again. The last time I worked with a coach was over a year ago, and when you're working with a coach, as you will know from being a coach and working with clients, even if it's slightly different to the kind of training that I'm doing currently, your job as a coach is to make your athlete or your person improve at whatever they do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the primary difference I would see between training and exercising. I think training is exercise with a focus of getting better, but not only a focus of getting better, but also a process of getting better. So in my instance, my progression or how I'm getting better is measured by, weight on the bar, quality of reps, obviously body composition. Just for your listeners, I'm currently doing a fat loss phase, and that involves a lot of resistance training. Not any cardio at the moment, actually, which a lot of people, that might surprise some people, because they go, fat loss cardio. But believe it or not, there isn't actually any cardio, and it's been going really, really well so far. But yeah, the difference between training and exercising, I can certainly give you more specific details, but essentially it's getting better at whatever you're doing over time and having a process of tracking how you're getting better.
Yeah.
And obviously having goals in mind as well, and working towards those and following a plan with some structure to get you there, as opposed to exercising might be just showing up in the gym and going, okay, what am I going to train today? What am I going to do? Am I going to train legs? Random, which is still great, still very good for your health, but it's not training towards anything specific.
Yeah. But I think as well, it's just as nice to do that, because when I was in, let's say, when I moved to Valencia at the start, I just wanted to get my gym, like the actual getting back into the gym, getting the consistency there again. So I wasn't as structured on what I was doing. I was actually going in and doing the things that I enjoy more. For me, I think everyone has the thing that you enjoy when you get into the gym. For me, it's like, I love doing back. That's actually my go-to. Back and legs are kind of my main one, which is probably shows that I have a little chicken chest, but but they're my go-to all the time. I'll always kind of lean on that, especially if I'm falling out of it and I want to get back into it, because I think I just have a set number of exercises that I know once I can get those in 2 or 3 times a week, and it usually just takes me about 2 sessions, and then I can start to get back in. All right, I need to start hitting chest more, I need to start hitting maybe the accessory side of things a small bit more. But once I start doing that, I know then that I can build a consistent routine. So I suppose that side of it is more exercising for me as opposed to training. But when I actually get into it and I try to focus on my training a small bit more on whether it's football or if it's jiu-jitsu or whatever it is, body comp is actually something that I focus on a small bit more in the last few weeks. When I do focus on that, I think that like as you say, you have a real direction when you go into the gym, don't you? It's like you know what you're going in there. It's getting an hour and a half. Get in there, get out. You're not gonna be dilly dallying, messing around, trying to pick random exercises. So I think that everyone should exercise for a time to build it up, but really to get consistent with it and to build a consistent routine, you do need to transition to that training side.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're 100% right in that. Like sometimes exercising, sometimes just exercising suits your life better, or suits what you want out of your training better. Like this year for me, 2022 was very much a case of my primary focus was not on my body composition. It was not on my lifts in the gym. It was not on kind of gym based performance or anything like that. So my exercise this year was very much, okay, keep me fit, keep me healthy. For my mental health, huge tool. I always feel so good when I exercise. I wouldn't dream of not exercising. And I also wanted like freedom and flexibility for doing other things. So I did a lot of skydiving this year, which was my main life goal this year. And within that life goal, there's a bigger kind of life goal there. But there's lots of smaller life goals that will be ticked off over the next couple of years to get there. And this year was a huge year for that. So my goals were not so much focused, which meant I didn't need to train. Yeah. I could just exercise and, still make progress, still get stronger and get better and, make progress in the gym and in body composition. Although it is a lot easier to do that when you are actually training and following a plan, and it is quite easy to slip into poorer habits when you don't have a kind of a goal. So I've kind of realised that this year, and I've realised that exercising is absolutely brilliant and everyone should be doing it. But for me, I think I get the most out of my exercise when I'm actually training. And I think that having goals with your exercise and with your health and your fitness, for me at least, in my opinion, is something that I will just not kind of let take a back seat anymore. Because I just feel a lot better. Yeah. And I feel I also get a lot more out of the time that I put in. I'm really, really big on being efficient with my time, with anything I do, if I can be. And I'm probably going to work with my coach for at least the next 2, 3, 4 years, maybe indefinitely, Who knows?
That's the thing. Once you're hitting your goals, once you're seeing progress, it's very easy to stay on with someone. It's easier to stay on with them than it is to stop in a lot of cases, because you're getting to where you want to be. But you mentioned skydiving there as a goal. When you look at that in terms of training for skydiving, apart from, let's say, the very obvious goal of survive and pull the parachute, what are the developmental stages of skydiving?
Ooh. It's a seriously technical sport. Yeah. So when I got into it, probably similar to your experience with jiu-jitsu, you see people doing it and you go, yeah, all right. Go to the jiu-jitsu gym, go to the skydive center. I'll do the course, maybe I'll do my first year of jiu-jitsu and I'll be awesome at it. Or in my case, I'll go and I'll do the skydive course and that's it. I'll just go and jump out of planes all the time and it'll be awesome. No.
That's what I was thinking.
Not at all. You get there and you realise that you are at the bottom or at the start of what, if you want to get the most out of it, is a lifelong journey. You look at anyone who's at the top of their field, particularly in sports like jiu-jitsu and skydiving, because you can do these things till you're 60, 70, older
again, Yeah.
So these are things that the people who are at the top have been doing it for 40 years. Yeah. Maybe even more. Some people their entire lives. So when I came in, I realised quite quickly that I was right at the bottom. And all my ego and my, look at me, I can jump out of a plane, was just punched in the face. And I was very humbled, as I'm sure was probably your experience in jiu-jitsu. I haven't done jiu-jitsu, but anyone I know who has, it's a very humbling sport. Yeah. But something that, and I'm kind of going off topic here a little bit, but something that has parallels to skydiving as well is, from what I gather, it's an incredible community. Yeah. And there's no people kind of shitting on you because you're a beginner. It's very much a helpful community and people appreciate the work you put in and stuff like that. So that's kind of a parallel. But in terms of the actual stages, so this year, I think maybe to kind of give your listeners a more broad breakdown of the sport, there's numerous things. There's obviously the exit of the plane and actually pulling your parachute. But when you actually jump out of the plane, you have like 60 seconds of free fall, and you're essentially falling into 200 kilometers an hour of wind.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine standing outside on a windy day, which is maybe, I don't know, 80 kilometers an hour of wind on a really windy day, it's, it kind of moves you a little bit. So when you have like 200, even more, 300 kilometers, 400 kilometers of an hour in certain cases, coming against you, tiny body movements make a huge difference. You need to find stability. So there's free flying, which is your ability to control yourself when you're falling, and you can do all sorts of things, flying upside down, on your back, on your front. You can fly horizontally by turning your body into kind of the shape of the wing. So there's free flying, there's tracking, which is the kind of forward flying. There's canopy flying, which is when you actually bring out the parachute and now you need to steer this thing to the ground. And like 90% or more of deaths and injuries occur under canopy. So that's a seriously important aspect.
Really, yeah?
On landings and stuff as well, because you're landing quite quickly, especially when you get up, I should say get down the sizes in the canopies. As the canopies get smaller, they get faster and it's more difficult to land. So there's a lot of different elements. And then just actually knowing your safety procedures when shit goes wrong, and knowing your equipment, and knowing how to check your equipment, and knowing, then when you start flying with other people, you're essentially in the air with 300 kilometer an hour missiles beside you. And it's no joke, people crash sometimes, and when you crash at that speed, it's not pretty. So there's a lot of stuff. I hope that kind of gives you a basis, because there's a lot.
Because I suppose it's the same as obviously there's so many more levels to it, but the way you discussed it there, like the small body positions, obviously that's an individual thing of trying to get that right yourself, and obviously people can train you how to do it, and you can spend your own time in the flow chambers. What are they called?
The wind tunnel.
The wind tunnel. Yeah. You can spend your time in the wind tunnel to work on that. But I actually didn't think about that other side of it, the group side of skydiving as well, where you can't exactly be just going head down, hoping that you're not going to hit anyone.
That's when it gets really, really fun.
Yeah.
And really, really exciting. But the levels of danger go up an awful lot. Skydiving on your own, so people who will do a tandem skydive, is statistically very safe.
Yeah.
But that's also because most people only ever do it once. When you start to do it all the time and do it in big groups, like in the couple of drop zones that I've been in Spain this year, there's been a number of fatalities this year.
Really?
And that's pretty standard. Yeah. So it's it's pretty standard when you're in the circle, because it's quite a small circle, that people have accidents. So there was one. I was recently in Sevilla, if you're Spanish, in the drop zone about 6 weeks ago, and the week before I went, there's a really, really famous guy called Nims Persia. You might have seen his documentary 14 Peaks.
Oh yeah.
He did the 14 Peaks. He was involved in an accident with his training partner, and basically they were flying canopies. So the parachutes, the canopies is the canvas part of the parachute, one slightly above the other and very, very close, quite low to the ground, and they got tangled and the canopies crumpled and they started falling at free fall speed, and they cut away. So you have two handles. You have a reserve handle and you have a cutaway handle, and you basically grab your cutaway handle, which is here on the right, and your reserve handle, and you cut away your main parachute first, and that separates the main parachute.
Yeah.
And then you deploy your reserve. That process isn't instant. So basically, Nims got his parachute out, but the other guy didn't have time and hit the ground at full speed.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy from 14 Peaks.
14 Peaks. Yeah, this is only like 2 months ago. So you can check it on Google. Very, very sad. And the guy was I think he was an possibly Marine.
Yeah, he was the guy from 14. Well, the guy in 14 Peaks anyway.
Yeah. So Nims was fine, but the guy who died was his training partner, who I think was an ex-Marine, and like these guys were very experienced. You know, Nims is like one of the top extreme athletes in the world. He was also multiple world records, but these things happen, you know.
I could be wrong, but if anyone hasn't seen the documentary of 14 Peaks, it's an excellent one. It's actually really, really good for just the perseverance in general.
Yeah.
To be able to do that is crazy. He climbs all of the top mountains, is it?
Yeah, I think, I don't want to get the numbers wrong, but basically he climbed 14 of the biggest peaks in the world.
Over 8,000 meters, isn't it?
Over 8,000 meters, I think that number is correct, in 6 months. And the previous record for doing those 14 peaks was 7 years.
Yeah.
So he beat the previous record by 14. And he climbed, I think the most impressive part was he climbed K2 in winter. And K2 is the most dangerous mountain in the world. And winter is the most dangerous time of year to climb K2. I think that am I right in saying that 1 in 3 who summit K2 die?
Yeah, there's some crazy statistic on it. I couldn't.
Again, the numbers might be wrong, but basically, it's an extremely dangerous mountain. Like I think it's 1 in 3 or maybe 1 in 4 who attempt it die.
Yeah, and they were able to do it as well. They were able to go up. I could be wrong, but I know Everest Space Camp, and there's another one that could be very close to each other. I actually think it's K2. But they went up one, came down, and went up the other one in the space of a couple of days. Yeah. Like, it was outrageous. And there was one time that there was actually a guy stuck on the mountain. And I won't ruin the documentary. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. And the boys had actually come down the mountain, had been in the camp, and there was still a guy who was stuck on the top. So at night, they turned around, went back up to get your man, saved him, and brought him down again. Which is... to be able to do something like that and still have another 10 peaks to climb.
And this guy wasn't part of their team.
No.
They had no... I guess they had no responsibility to go and help this guy. Of course, it's the human thing to do, but they were also, halfway through, not even halfway, I think they were just a couple of peaks into this huge project, and everything was run by a schedule and time. And they were willing to sacrifice the whole project to rescue this guy, and they did, and then they went on to complete it. So absolutely incredible. And I don't want us to butcher the stats because we may have done there. I'm not exactly sure on the stats, but people should go. I think we're pretty accurate, but I think people should go and watch that documentary
if you haven't done so.
It's incredible. But anyway, long story short, Nims was involved in an accident 8 weeks ago, give or take, in Sevilla, and the guy he was training with died. So that was one example. Earlier in the year, a guy with 400 jumps, quite experienced, had been in Puerto Brava in the north of Spain doing his first jump wingsuit course, and he died on his first training jump in a wingsuit. He couldn't open his parachute for whatever reason. Some difficulty he had. I believe it was human error, and I think he waited for... There is a device where if you lose consciousness in the sky, if you crack heads with someone in the sky, this device should fire your parachute when you cross 1,000 feet at a certain speed. You can set the altitude, but if you cross a certain altitude too fast, there's an automatic activation device that realizes, it's like a speedometer that says, okay, you've crossed this altitude too fast, you mustn't have a parachute out, and there's a tiny little explosion, and it actually cuts a wire and fires your parachute. So they think that this guy waited for the device, and the device failed, and that was him. And the year before, there was 2 guys flying, tracking, so tracking is like horizontal flight, and the 2 guys crashed, and collision, both died.
There's that element
essentially, you're going at top speed. One of my friends has hit like close to 500 kilometers an hour flying, which is just insane. It's like faster than the fastest ever Formula 1 car. Without the car. So it's a serious sport.
No shit. Like, it's I was going to say, you mentioned something that I wanted to circle back to it because I think it would be a good one for people who are interested in trying out something new but have that side to them that they need. For me anyway, I'll talk about it, is that when I started jiu-jitsu, now I have a podcast coming out soon enough, and it was actually one of the guys who initially sparked my interest in jiu-jitsu. So it was nice to get back and talk to him about it after. But there's an element of jiu-jitsu that you have to be humble. Like there has to be an ego death there. You can't, if you go in there thinking you're going to beat everyone, you're not going to get past the first day, because the first day you're going to get annihilated by men bigger or smaller than you, women bigger or smaller than you, people who are just at a higher level, who've trained longer. And I think when it comes to a lot of sports and when it comes to a lot of activities or trying something new out, the ego takes over for a lot of people. And I think that it's a dangerous thing, because it'll cut off a lot that you can do. And in two ways. For me, I see it because someone gets an injury, and then when they're trying to get back, their ego they won't be at the same level as they were straight away. It might take them a small bit of time, and the ego gets in the way. And for a lot of people, like, that could be something they love doing and they really enjoy doing, but then they stop, which really gets to me, because I just think that there's so many, you only have a certain time on this earth is the first thing. So if you're letting your ego take over, you're not going to get anything to do, or not going to be able to do anything with your life, really, is what I think anyway. So how did you approach that at the start? For me, in jiu-jitsu, I just knew that from coming from, let's say, boxing background and other backgrounds, sporting background, I knew that there was going to be a stage that I was going to get the shit out of me, and I'm just going to have to take it for the first 6 months. How did you approach that with skydiving? How did you get the ego out of the way, or how have you approached that in maybe a different situation? Because the same thing is for the gym. You might not be able to lift as what you used to be able to lift.
Yeah, skydiving just humbled me without me having to do anything. It basically took my ego and just rolled it in the dirt and kicked it around a few times and said, "Cop yourself on." And I was very, very quickly humbled. So it's a weird one. The fear, obviously. I mean, when you're on the door of the airplane, the first time that you jump out, and you're wearing your own parachute, and like you've practiced the process on the ground, but the ground is nothing, like so little in common to when you're at like 12,000 feet. This plane is going at 100 and something odd miles an hour. There's the wind roaring in your face. There's like the smell of plane fuel. And then you're there with this parachute, this huge, big beginner's parachute on your back, trying to get to the door, trying to not bang any of your handles. And you basically are exiting with a guy on either side.
Okay.
Left and right.
Holding on or not?
Yeah, so holding on.
Okay.
So there's an instructor, each with their own parachutes. So you're on your own essentially.
Yeah.
But as you leave, there's one guy holding you by the arm on the left and one guy holding you by the arm on the right. And you're terrified. Like, anyone who tells you they're not is full of shit. And you're proper terrified. It was probably the most fear I've ever felt. And you're pretty quickly humbled there, because that fear, you can't have an ego when you're that scared. But then when you do it and you come down and you do it a few more times and then you complete your course, then the ego starts to come back, because you're like, I got this. And I was having that happen where, my first few jumps, I had a few things in my first jumps. I couldn't find my pilot chute, which is what you use to open the parachute, but I was with instructors and they pulled the pilot chute, and obviously you get to the ground and you go, fuck, I couldn't do the most important part of the whole jump, and that was something that kind of ate me up for a couple of jumps, and that really killed the ego, to the point where it was like the opposite of the ego. It was like, am I able for this? It was like, I don't think I'm so it was kind of the opposite of having an ego. It was kind of actually a lot of self-doubt and fear initially. And then after maybe, the first 10 jumps, I think the ego started coming back. And then as I have 150 odd jumps now. And there's been a couple of like hairy moments in those. And there's been a couple of like close calls and scares. So I think every time the ego starts to build up a little bit, it fairly quickly got clipped back down. And now I'm a lot more safety conscious. And I'm also fortunate that I'm friends with a lot of skydivers. Yeah. And when I say skydivers, I mean people who work in the sport, people who've been in it for years. Not someone who's just got a few jumps and is like, I do this every weekend and has the ego. like I hang around with a lot of people who are serious skydivers, and I learn a lot from them, both in terms of like ability and skill, but also in terms of like this can go really, really badly, and when it does, you know,
You want to.
yeah, when it does go bad, it goes bad.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So I think that's kind of kept me from having an ego, and also just because I hang around with guys who are literally like streets ahead of me.
Yeah.
Like it's very. I think it's probably similar. It's very difficult for you to have an ego when you're watching black belts rolling around in the mat in jiu-jitsu.
Easily, yeah. But that's the thing.
The similar feeling I have, I think.
Yeah, because it's like when I was a white belt, it really gave me like, I was like, okay, I can. It doesn't really matter if I win, lose, or draw here, but there was an ego there that once I started training a while, I was like, okay, I'm actually beating a few blue belts here, and I'm actually getting the better of a lot of the white belts. But then when I got the blue belt, it's like someone just took an ego and gave it back to me. It's like, right, here you go, man, take it out. Now you think that you're somewhere. And I was like, Jesus, okay, right. So I obviously got the blue belt, so I must be able to handle myself in some way, shape, or form. Now, think about that on every level. Like, so when someone gets a purple belt, I can imagine it's the same thing. Someone gets a brown. But then they say when you get the black, that's supposed to disappear. That it's supposed to be at a level that you have a good knowledge of the skills, but you also have a good knowledge that on someone's day, they can beat you, like any day. And I think for me, it's trying to relearn that I need to get rid of that ego, because if I do have it, it's going to really stunt my growth. It's really going to, because I'm not going to try certain things with certain people, because I'm going to think, okay, if I'm against the white belt, I'm supposed to beat this guy every time. Like, that's the way I'm against the purple belt. Okay, I can try out. It's not too big of an issue. But if I'm against the white belt, I should be able to do this, and I can't get caught, which limits what you're going to try, which limits your appetite for risk. You're not going to. I'll risk it against people that are better than me, because if they beat me, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But people that are not as good as me, which are the ones that you will learn off of the most, because like when you're with those, you can put yourself in a bad position, and you can be confident enough that you will be able to work yourself out of that position. But so for the last few months, I've been trying to relearn how to get rid of that ego completely, because like, as I was saying, you don't want to stunt your growth. And my appetite for risk, I love putting myself at risk for a lot of cases. Obviously I don't have any dependables. Neither of us have dependables now, no kids or anything like that. So we're able to do that at the moment. But I think risk is with the ego. If you have too much of an ego, you're not going to take risk. And that's in sport, and that's in life, I think.
Do you feel that your ego can help you in any way?
I do, yeah. I do. I think an ego does help it, because it builds up your self-confidence. It builds up your self-worth. It can challenge you to be a better person. So it's not that, I think this not that you want to get rid of the ego completely, but you can't let the ego take over. I think you need to sway over and back between having it take over in certain situations where, like, let's say if I get beaten on a night, jiu-jitsu is an easy one for me to use as an example, because it's just something that I'm training at a lot. If I get beaten on a night multiple times, like I was recently, I got caught with an armbar by 2 different guys 3 different times. So that's, what's that? Too many times. 6 times, yeah.
Than you want to admit.
in the same go. So like for me, when I went home that night, my ego helped me took over and said, okay, right, I need to look into this. So I spent an hour and a half just looking at videos of armbar escapes, how to not get caught in armbars. So in that, and then when I went back, I wasn't getting caught with them anymore. So they obviously had to change on. That element of it, I think, was really, really important. But it needs to be in check, and you need to know when your ego's taking over. I think that's the important part. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said there. I feel like the ego can definitely be helpful in terms of if you see yourself in a certain way, and I think it's fair to say your ego kind of inflates how you see yourself.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Okay. So if you see yourself in a slightly inflated way, I personally think that's a good thing. You mentioned self-confidence or self-belief or self-esteem. Like all of those things will come from you viewing yourself in a more positive light. But then you actually have to back it up. So yeah. I actually shared a video the other day, which I loved so much. It was just a short video. And I don't actually know the guy's name. But what he said was that, like, self-confidence, and I'm paraphrasing here, but self-confidence is essentially you making promises to yourself
I saw that video, yeah.
And building a reputation with yourself, because if you can make promises and keep promises to yourself, that's the important part, actually keeping them and seeing them through, and essentially proving yourself to yourself and having a great reputation with yourself where you're like, I know I'm an operator at X, I know I can do this. Then you back yourself and you don't really need that outwards kind of, I guess...
words of affirmation or people kind of building you up on that.
Yeah, you can get your confidence from yourself and your actions. So I think that if your ego inflates how you see yourself, then in order for you to keep up with your ego, you need to take certain actions. And I think that that's positive, certainly for me. Like, I don't believe I'm currently at where I want to be. And there's another really, really interesting concept that I think ties in. Alex Hormozy.
Yeah.
Sure, right? So, incredible entrepreneur, incredible thinker, just an incredible guy, full stop. If you don't know Alex Hormozy, come out from under the rock.
He's a businessman now, that's it.
Yeah, I'm only joking, but anyone who's in business will know Alex Hormozy, and even if you're not in business, he's a great guy to listen to, and I would recommend checking him out. But he was looking at like what actually predicts success in an entrepreneurial sense, and there was like 3 points, and people go like, oh, you got to get up at 5 a.m. to be successful, or you got to eat 3 meals a day to be successful, or you got to fast to be successful, or you got to do meditation in the morning, and like there's 100 different things that people say you need to do to be successful. And I saw him lay out this one thing that was so interesting. He said that like one of the most common things in highly successful people was a superiority complex. And what he meant by that was that people believed they were better than other people.
Yeah.
The people at the top believed that they deserved more. They believed they were better than the norm, or better than what the other people around them were doing. And not necessarily in a bad way, but they had, I think, an inflated ego.
Yeah.
Like I think those things are similar, and it obviously drove them to be very successful because they thought they were better than people, and they wanted to prove themselves to themselves. And I think that that's a positive use of the ego. Now, obviously, there's anything that's kind of powerful and helpful can be bad also. So like you said, I think you need to manage it, but I absolutely think it can be helpful.
Yeah.
But I think you also need to be able to then rescue your ego. So for example, you rolling with a white belt, you don't want... So there's two sides to it, I think. You rolling with a white belt, your ego says you need to beat this guy. I'm a blue belt. I need to beat this guy. I'm better than he is. Okay? I've been doing this longer. I'm better than he is. So in a way, you're going to go in and you're going to give it absolutely everything, and you're going to be more thoughtful and concentrated and focused because of your ego.
And you have a level of confidence.
So all of those things are there because of your ego.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. But I think when it can be a really bad thing is when you won't roll with the guy because you're scared of losing, or you don't want to be seen to lose, and that would bruise your ego. So I think use your ego, but you have to be willing to risk it. And I think like my experience of this is like business or like entrepreneurship or like failed projects.
Yeah.
Like you have to be willing to put yourself out there. With the podcast, you had to be willing to put yourself out there. You had to put your ego on the line where people turn around and don't like the podcast, or no one listens to the podcast, or it just doesn't work out, or you feel like you don't do yourself justice and your ego is bruised. But possibly the other part of your ego is, I want to do a podcast. I see other, really, really incredible people who I admire doing podcasts. I want to be on that level. I feel that I'm capable. And that's also partly, your ego wants you to get there. So like, I think, I think it's a really, really important thing. And I think it's how you use it.
It's how you use it, but it is. You made the point there of when it takes over. The fact that if I wasn't going to roll with a white belt, or if there was a purple belt not going to roll with me because I've been training well, or a brown belt that wasn't going to roll with me, and I've seen it happen as well before. that you do, especially when you're a white belt, you see it happen more, like when you're kind of just about to transition, that people will be less likely to roll with you because they will feel that, okay, you have a bit of an advantage here, so they'll just avoid it until you get the new belt, like, which is a crazy thing. So, but just for the people who are watching or for the people who are listening, I think it's important to know when that's taken over, and I think it happens to all of us. Like, let's say, for example, if you wanted to try out a new sport, or if you wanted to try out running, okay, and your friend is a runner, and now you're afraid, or you start running with them, and on the first day then you notice that they're running at a faster pace, they might be running for more distance, might be able to talk to you while they're running, and you're kind of out of breath. Well, after the first day, when you come back, you have two choices. You can make the choice that, okay, they were better than me, so I'm actually, like, I'm not going to catch up to them, and I don't have any chance to catch up to them, so I'm going to have to probably try something else where they're not as good, or the person isn't as good as me, and I'm not testing against a friend of mine or whatever. You have that choice to say that I'm not going to try it again. Your other choice is to say, okay, they're better than me because they've been doing this for longer. They have more hours under the belt. You know, that's just as simple as they have more time spent in the shoes, they have more time beating the road, and you have to understand that, okay, I will go and I'll test myself. I have to understand that I'm not going to beat them, okay, for the first while. But once you can build that up and you can run a 5k comfortably, now it might not be at a pace that they're running at. You might be running a 5k in 35, 40 minutes. No difference in the world. They might be running it in 20 minutes, okay? But it's about just getting that out of the way of how good you're doing, and consistency, and just trying to just be as consistent as possible. Take the failures. I often said that, like, I actually enjoy, or I try to enjoy, not that I enjoy, I don't think anyone enjoys it, I try to enjoy getting beaten at times. I do, I really do. Like, one of my favourite times when I look back on times that, in business especially, were times that I struggled the most. Times that things went against me. Maybe, I don't know, like Instagram wasn't going as well, or maybe the podcast wasn't going as well, or maybe I finished up with a couple of clients at one stage, and I had to kind of I'd start putting the gears, or get the gears turning and start picking up the business again. At times, and I can remember saying this to a friend out when I was in Bali, that there was a bit of a changeover, that I had a group of clients that had all finished up at the same time. They had got to where they wanted to get to, and I needed to get a new group of clients in, because obviously that's how we get by. So I remember saying to him, it's not a good time, it's a pretty shit time to be involved, but I know that I will be able to figure it out. I know I'm going to be able to figure out how to do this, because I had that confidence, because I had it done before. But at that stage, and I've seen this happen to other people, I could have just started looking up physio jobs in hospitals.
Yeah,
you know,
the easy way out, my friend.
I had that option, that I was qualified. I could have easily just said, okay, right, I'm in Bali, I could just go to Australia and I could start looking at jobs. And I don't have any problem at all with a physio job in a hospital or a physio job in a private clinic. I really don't, and I think they're doing great work. But for me, it's not what I just don't like working under other people.
Yeah.
If I'm honest.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think, and we said this earlier, you know, off air, it's very, very hard to go back and work for somebody when you've built something up yourself, and when you've experienced the freedom you can have, you know, to, I would say, better your life, but also better the experience for your clients as well.
Yeah.
Like, my client experience now is far superior to my client experience when I was working in a gym. I had to get up at 6 a.m, take one client at 7, one client at 9, couple of hours break, back at 1. In short, my schedule, my life was all over the shop.
Yeah.
And then my service, and you know, the time that I could spend upskilling and making myself better was less.
Yeah.
So the service that I was providing was poorer, and obviously being able to work for myself, that gave me the time to go, okay, well, I can now work with, say, 20 clients, which would have taken up all my time in the gym. 20 clients would have been, say, 20 hours a week on the gym floor. But for every one of those clients, you have to get to the gym, you have to get back, and then they ask you questions afterwards, and they might want some feedback on nutrition, and then you need to do, you know, your accounts for the week, and okay, to keep track of your money and all these other things. 20 clients for me as an online coach takes a lot less time. And that's not so like I can just work, 20 clients in the gym took me a full 40-hour week.
Yeah.
20 clients online takes me half that time. But the other half of that time is actually put into becoming fitter, stronger, healthier, better myself, which translates into my job. So I actually bring a better service to people because I don't work as much. Plus, just, obviously the freedom of being able to travel and the freedom to pick your own schedule to a certain extent and all of those things. I think it's very, very difficult to go back. And I personally am unlikely to ever work for anyone else again. I'm pretty independent and unemployable.
Yeah.
So I think those two things mean that I will not be looking for a job anytime soon. But one thing that you mentioned there as well, and I think it's important to note, is for anyone who's listening, and this is not just, my experience will obviously be starting my own business and running my own business, as will yours, but this can be any challenging thing in anybody's life who's listening. The most difficult parts are actually where you build a lot of your skill and your work ethic and your self-confidence and your belief in yourself. And similar to you, at a couple of points, over the last, say, 4 years, I've, through my own mistakes and being sloppy and lazy and maybe being a little bit arrogant, have almost tanked my business a couple of times. And, the first time, I really was on death's door with the business. It was within the first year, I think. And I was like, I need to do something here. And it was like, okay, pedal to the metal. I'm going to work as hard as I can. I'm going to get really great results with my current clients so that I get referrals. I'm going to create a lot of meaningful, helpful content so that people appreciate the value and can see that, okay, this is the free stuff. What is the paid service like? If this is for free, what is the paid service like? And I just put in a lot of work and I worked hard and I backed myself. And off the back of that, I actually tripled my income to previously.
But what you said there, it comes back to it, and it's something I'm so passionate about, is backing yourself. Just backing yourself. If you have got to any stage with anything at all, and it doesn't have to be a professional with anything, but if you have gone from losing 5 kilo, if you've gone to losing 10 kilo, starting up a new sport, joining a new social group, if you've ever done anything like that, you're in the door. You've a foot in the door. So you can just use that same skill level and you can start to apply it to other things. And I think for me, one of the points that I wanted to nail home on that specific thing was that even though you can look at it like everything's crashing around me, oh shit, and it really does feel like that. It really does feel like that everything is coming down around you. But if you can just take a step back and revel in that moment and be just completely confident in yourself that you're going to come out the other end, I think that it gives you so much power in your life to do whatever you want. I really think it does. It gives you so much power to try out whatever you want. Now, there is people who will be introverted. There might be people who are extroverted. There's people who just have a lot of confidence and people who don't have confidence. But confidence itself is built off getting things right. Yeah. Getting things, or just trying things out and getting it, failing and then trying again. That's what my opinion on confidence is just getting things, doing the small things and getting them right until you get to a level that, okay, I've done this enough. I've done this a few times. It doesn't have to be in the same thing, but I've done it a few times that now I can say, all right, I probably can apply this in this situation, and I'll see what happens. Because if you feel that you're stupid, or if you feel that you're dumb, that's going to have an effect in your life and you will not challenge yourself. But if you feel that you can come out of any situation, it doesn't matter if you come out good or bad, but you can come out of a situation and still be there to fight on, because you don't fail until you give up. That's really the way it is. And I don't mean to make this into a motivational speech, but in general, that was something that I heard ages ago. The only time you fail is when you actually give up. So even if everything goes to shite, you can still rebuild and you can still start again. And I really want to push that for the people who are listening to this or people who are watching this, is that if you just keep chipping on just keep chipping on a small amount. You'll make a huge difference in your life, and you can make a huge difference. And as you said, like a coach in a lot of ways is a good way to do that, because they can just keep you chipping on, because they're keeping you accountable to what you're doing, and they're keeping you on track. So if that's something that you need, or if that's something you ever want to do, just definitely reach out to a coach. Like, it's something that will help you massively. But if you feel you can do it yourself, and you have that mindset of it's just take it day by day, there's very little that you can't do, I think.
For sure. And I think people get that wrong with coaching. Like, I often talk to clients who are going to come on board, or who are considering it, and they go, now's not a good time, I wouldn't be able to do things perfectly, I can't fully commit because I can't go to the gym 5 days a week. And I'm like, that's not what this is about. I'm like, this is about finding out what you're currently doing and making it 1% better every day. This is not about perfection. This is not about being perfect, because the reality is you're not going to be perfect anyway. So why would we strive for this? And then this is about, okay, trying, failing, running into roadblocks, figuring out a way to get around them. And funny thing is, when you get round a roadblock once, it's no longer a roadblock. You now know how to get around it. And the reality is that life is, in my experience at least, is just constant roadblocks and constant finding your way around. But the more you do that, now you can take on bigger roadblocks, you know, and now you have that self-confidence and self-belief, and you know that you are someone who will actually follow through on what you say. And I think your physical health and fitness is really the basis of that. I can't imagine what my life would be like if I hadn't been training consistently over the last 5 or 6 years. Like, it absolutely changed the kind of trajectory that I was on. I really think that's the first place people have to work, and that is the place where you build up discipline, where you build up, you know, backing yourself. You maybe if it's a new skill, you just kind of conquer that fear of going in and looking silly or whatever if you're new. But also the whole failure thing, like pushing yourself and failing and coming out and feeling drained and then feeling so good after it, you know. Like, that stuff it's the bread and butter. I really think it is.
You can't buy that, like, you can't. And it is, as you say, it's just building discipline. Like, if you can apply it to one thing, you can apply it to everything. And if you, I'm sure for you as well, as it is for me, I can look back on things and say, okay, I can see where that was tough and I got over that. I can I can do that. And I think that reflection side is important, because you have that choice of when things are starting to come on top of you and really come down, of self-pity and feeling like, oh, I wish things were going better. Or you can take the time to look back through what you've done before and say, okay, right, in this situation it might be similar, but I was still able to overcome that and I was still able to improve on it. And if you can do that consistently, just day by day, small times, okay, right, I was able to do that before, or I wasn't able to do that yesterday, I can do that today. It's funny how that can build confidence. And it's actually one of the things that the Navy SEALs used. I'm sure you follow Andrew Huberman. They did a test on the people who were able to get through Hell Week, and I've talked about this before in this podcast before. The Navy SEALs who were able to get through Hell Week and actually into the Navy SEALs were the ones who were able to set small goals just in front of them. So instead of saying, I need to get through the whole week, it was, I need to get to the door over there. So if they were doing a run, or I need to wait, or I need to do another 5 minutes, or I need to do another 10 minutes, I just need to carry this bag from here to over there. And if they were able to set those small goals consistently, they were getting through. The majority of the ones who were able to do that were able to get through. And that was what the difference was between the ones who dropped out early and the ones who were able to, day by day, just keep pushing on. Which is, I think, is a testament to itself, that setting small goals is huge. Yeah, and just focusing on the small steps, you know, like the daily actions. And no matter what your goal is, like, it really is just an accumulation of daily actions. And like people, so there's a kind of a circle. I guess it's more than a circle. It's maybe a square, because there's 4 things that kind of make up the sides of the square. But there's this thing called discipline, which we all kind of hear of. There's motivation, there's habit,
and there's action, and how those four things kind of interact. So everyone has this kind of conception that, okay, in order to succeed, I need to be super motivated, and I can't get where I want because I'm not motivated.
Yeah.
And that's completely wrong. Now, you will wake up sometimes and feel motivated, or maybe you watch, I don't know, a certain movie. Okay, if you're into entrepreneurship, you watch Billions, the TV show, and you're super motivated afterwards.
I must watch
or
that.
Or you're a soccer player. I haven't actually watched it, but I've heard it's quite motivating. You're a soccer player, right? And you watch Messi bringing Argentina to win the World Cup, and you're super motivated. And you're like, you know, you're just like out training, and you probably watched GA games when you were younger, and immediately after the game went out to the garden to kick a football, or you know.
Yeah.
So those things, that's like short-term motivation, and you're like, I'm going to do this every single day, and then like 3 days later, no sign of you being in the garden training to the same intensity. But that thing called action, and this kind of comes back to a lot of things. It comes back to the small steps every day that you mentioned, or the small goals that the Navy SEALs set, and it also comes back to like getting out of those tough situations where you're like, I need to do something. But when you take an action, you actually feel good and it motivates you. So it might be just like going to the gym the first day and you feel good afterwards, and that action actually produces motivation, right?
Yeah.
So all you really need to do to be motivated is to keep taking actions. So like, how do you do that? Well, you have to be disciplined at the start. But for you, I think we'd agree that it's not really discipline that gets you to the gym anymore. Like, no. Are you super disciplined, or is it just something you do?
Yeah, I'm a sports person. For me, my identity is that I exercise and I go to the gym. That's my identity. So it's not an act, or it's not.
I need to get myself there. I go because part of my identity, and it's a habit that's part of the person that you are and your identity, and that's like the long-term goal.
Yeah.
It's like, if you become that person, I don't need to wake up and go, oh, I need to motivate myself to go to the gym. I wake up and I can't wait to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Like, immediately after this podcast, I'm going to go and smash 250 milligrams of caffeine in a pre-workout and go and tear shreds out of the gym, and I can't wait. Like, it's one of the highlights of my day every day. But it wasn't like that at the start. You know, I did need discipline to get me started. Okay, discipline first, get me started taking actions. Okay, now I'm taking actions. And after a while, you know, of taking actions, I'm seeing changes and feeling better, and I'm getting more motivated. And then I just keep taking those actions, and the discipline kind of fades off and disappears, and now it just becomes a habit.
Yeah.
And you do a habit long enough, and it's still a habit, but it becomes even deeper than that. It's part of yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that you will train until the day you die, or the day that you no longer can train. Yeah. Because I know you so well. We know each other for years. And I know for a fact that you are not going to turn around someday and go, I'm not disciplined anymore, I can't do it. It's just not going to happen. You know?
There is times along the path that I will not be going to the gym because other things that are just going to be like, okay, like at times on that point, there is times that you fade out. And no one keeps everything 100% all the time. No one's perfect. Sure. No one's perfect in that way. So even though I know, and I'm sure you're the same, this is a season, as Alex Hormozy calls it, that I'm fading out of maybe doing the gym and I'm doing more skydiving, or this is a season that I'm fading out of doing jiu-jitsu and I'm focusing on the gym a small bit more. But I know that I'm gonna go back at it. Like, there's no question. It's not when, or it's not if, it's a when.
And I think I maybe didn't phrase that as well as I could have either. I think it was more so your whole lifestyle. Oh yeah,
that's it.
Because you can take some time out of the gym, but you're still a guy who's going to focus on being fit, being healthy, taking on new challenge, progressing. So like, maybe you're not in the gym for the next 10 years, but if you're rolling around in the jiu-jitsu mat, what's the difference? You know, you've just taken on a different aspect of a fit and healthy and challenging lifestyle, which is kind of, you know, my example was the gym, but I guess I meant in a more broader sense, you're not going to suddenly not be disciplined and start abusing your body with terrible food, you know, not training in any form or fashion, not seeking out kind of new experiences, essentially not looking after yourself.
But to back up the point of what you made with the gym, because I think it was a solid point, and I think it makes perfect sense, because you're dead right. I won't stop doing it. Like, it's going to be something that I do. But the opposite side of that is, when I do stop doing it, I know once I stop going to the gym and if I stop exercising, I'm in tune enough, I feel, with my body, and I'm sure you're the exact same, that I know that I'm not living in line with my values and my identity. And very soon after, my mental health suffers massively.
Shit.
My physical health obviously suffers. My motivation, my discipline, everything across the board drops off. Like it's because I know that I'm not living up to my values, and I start to break a lot of my other values along the way. So, on your point, it's not that. And I didn't mean to say that. Oh yeah, I'm going to get out of the gym and come back into it and all that. What I meant is that I know that once I get out of the gym, I might be out of it for a season, but it will creep in at a certain stage, because that's my identity and what I value. That if I don't get back to this, my life is going to start to take it down. It's going to start going down very fast, or take a turn for the worse. That's obviously a more extreme way of looking at it, but I just know myself, my own mental health will have a huge hit if I don't go to the gym.
For sure, yeah, man. It's honestly, your exercise and your training, and I think you can't talk about exercise and training without also talking about like your lifestyle and your nutrition. You know, like how you look after yourself, because going to the gym every day, but also drinking 10 pints every day and eating from KFC every day, no amount of gymming is going to make you healthy, right? Yeah. So you have your training or exercise, you know, whatever way you view it. Maybe you're a casual exerciser who does it just for your mental health benefits and your health benefits, or you're someone who's more driven for a specific goal, like a training kind of style approach. But those things have to go along with good nutrition, good quality food, and then good quality lifestyle, you know, sleeping well, minding yourself, you know, managing your life stresses and all of those things. And I think those are the things that kind of whole triad are part of the identity, you know.
Yeah.
I think it is genuinely those things, training, exercise, whatever you want to call it, along with your nutrition and your lifestyle, like they are the gateway drug to a better life.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that for a fact because I've walked the walk myself, and I've done it with hundreds of clients at this stage. You know, and you know they've all had some benefit in their lives. Some absolutely exponential, some more moderate, but everyone has seen a benefit. Like everyone who has trained with me has improved their quality of life and that's not because of me. That's because of the things that they do. You know, and obviously I can help them do it, but it's not about me as a coach. It's about the things that they are doing under a coaching program. But like, it's the gateway drug to everything. You know, do you think you would be running your own business if you weren't in physically and mentally good shape and running your own podcast? Do you think you'd have the confidence for those kind of things?
I think that it was definitely a stepping stone to building a good level of discipline, because I think when I think about when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I don't know if I had the same levels of discipline. I did as I become a teenager, and I kind of got more into sport and stuff like that. And at the same time, I also started to notice the benefits paying off of doing something consistently. So I think that definitely helped me a massive amount in just giving me the confidence that if I do something consistently, I will get better at it. And I think that the other side of it is that I grew up in a pub and restaurant, so I was always working under my parents and working for them and that. And that side of it as well, I could see from their perspective, where it was like they are the ones who run the business and they don't have to answer to anyone. And I can see it from my perspective where I had to answer to them.
To everyone.
Yeah. So I think that side of it for me was like, it was another one that I was like, okay, right, I need to look at how I can work towards that myself. And I think, and Alex Ramosi talks about it as well, where he talks about not every gym goer is going to be a good gym owner, but a lot of the time gym owners have put in the time in the gym as well, the majority of the time. So it's a stepping stone, I think, and I think that it's a stepping stone to building more discipline, building better resilience. I think it's also good for just being consistent and seeing the benefits of being consistent. Like that's honestly how I think it's had the biggest effect on me. And obviously keeping your head clear and focused, and because people when you're used to training, you notice it when you stop training, how much of an effect that has on you. When you're not used to training and you haven't done a lot of training in the past, you don't really notice that your head is muddled, that you're kind of not feeling as good, your energy is low, you feel like you shy a lot of the time. And I notice it when I stop training. I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah, for sure. And even the simple things, like having more energy because you look after yourself and you train. Like, and I keep going back to entrepreneurial, kind of examples, I guess, but that's my life is, I view life through the eyes of an entrepreneur, so kind of take this and mold it into your own viewpoints. But like some of the clients I work with, and some of my favorite clients to work with, are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And like one thing that we really focus on is obviously getting better in the gym, but just the process of, keeping fit and improving their nutrition and stuff. What we see generally is that they have increased energy levels, they have increased focus, they have increased kind of drive and ambition, because all the things you mentioned, they're seeing progress, they're realizing that consistency brings results, and they're seeing that consistency spill into other areas of life. And I have entrepreneurs who've worked with me for a long time, and they're actually making more money because they work with me.
Yeah.
And the cost of the coaching is actually providing them more value. And they're like, I'm never going to leave, because the cost of your coaching, I'm actually making more money every month because of my routine, because of my energy, and because of the fact that, they have someone, a lot of the time when I jump on a call with one of my entrepreneurial clients, the conversation is just as much about kind of what they're working on and stuff as well, because we're kind of on that level now where we both take interest in each other, and there's some accountability there too. But it's just the simple things like being more routine, being more structured, having more energy. Those things improve the rest of your life. And even if you're not an entrepreneur, like if you want a salary raise, or you want, some position at work, like who's going to get that salary raise, and who's going to get that position at work, or who's going to get the promotion, or whatever else like you're gunning for? Who's going to get it? The person who is in the gym, training multiple times a week, high energy levels, high confidence and self-esteem, understands that, taking quality actions over time leads to results, or the person who's not looking after themselves, who's reliant on caffeine to get them through the day. I'm not knocking caffeine. I love caffeine.
I love it.
But caffeine reliance is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And people who just crawl out of bed and hit the button on the coffee machine, and we both know from our friend Mr. Huberman that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
So like, who's going to win? Who's going to get the promotion? Who's going to get the raise? It's going to be the person who feels the best and who can perform the best. Because if you feel terrible and you're just getting through the days and you don't have the energy to barely get through the day, how on earth are you going to strive for the promotion or for this pay rise, or to start your own gig?
That's a good point. And I think that the other side of it is that we look up to people who are at levels that we want to achieve. I think we all do. I think we all kind of look at somebody and we say, right, like that's somewhere that I would like to get to. Now, for me, and I think, not to keep using your man as an example, but Hormozi is actually an interesting character because he's a extremely wealthy entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, but he's also in the shape of his life.
Yeah.
So he's also in a crazy shape. And I think that's something I wouldn't be as keen to look up to somebody who was a really good entrepreneur. Like Bill Gates, for example, like he's not exactly the first guy that comes to mind when I
doesn't excite me.
Doesn't excite me, yeah, because he's obviously excellent at certain parts of his life, but he's probably not showing excellence when it comes to the physical shape that he's in, because he wouldn't be in the shape that I would be trying to get to, for example. And I think when you look at your life, I think you do need to break it down into for me anyway, I always say like your physical, your psychological, your social, and your spiritual. That's how I kind of break down the elements of life. Now, Bill Gates he might have his, like, all of those might be good, or even let's say look at a professional personal, if you want to, or training. He might be very good in the professional side of things, that he's gotten a lot of money built up, and the psychological side of things, he might be very, very happy with the way he is. But from the physical side of things, he's probably not at where he could be. Now he's a bit older, so I'll let him off with that. He's built a lot of stuff, and I'm using a Dell here or Windows here, so I can't complain either. But I think that you do look up to people who excel in multiple aspects of their life, as opposed to just one aspect of their life. And that, for me anyway, maybe it's different for you, but for me, that's the thing that I look out for. I don't know if that's something that you have.
Man, for sure. But it comes back to, you mentioned it earlier, it's in alignment with your values.
Yeah.
Like, it's, you value you value the process of, you know, working on yourself in a physical sense as much as any other sense, like as much as your business and everything else, looking after yourself, you the person. I actually put that before my business. I'm extremely selfish, and I tell all my clients to be selfish. I'm like, be selfish and put yourself first.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that if you put yourself first and you're in the best physical and mental condition that you can be in through, you know, giving yourself adequate care, you're in a better position to help everyone around you. If you're a wreck and you're run down, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but if you're a wreck and you're run down and you're needing help, the people around you are going to need to help you instead of you being in a position to help them. Your business is not going to run well if you are not running well.
Yeah.
So like I think that's why we gravitate towards those people. And in Bill Gates' defense, it was probably a lot more difficult to be in shape because the information simply wasn't there.
Yeah.
60 years ago, or, you know, maybe it was there but no one knew for sure, whereas Alex Hormozy is quite a young guy, he's mid-30s I think, but I also, like, when I look at entrepreneurs I aspire to be, Bill Gates is an incredible entrepreneur, but he doesn't excite me in any sense. And so, you know, and I don't know why, but I sense that I look at the entrepreneurs or the people who've done really, really well, who do inspire me, and they are the guys who are in top physical condition as well. You know, like Alex Hormozy, Arnie, you know, all these people who've been incredibly successful. Andrew Huberman as well, you know, and again, someone who I guess walks the walk.
Yeah.
You know, as well as talking the talk, walks the walk and shows you that this is kind of what you should do, and I am also doing it. So yeah, I think we gravitate towards people who, I guess, fulfill our values, and who, I mean, you know, for some people they will be like, Bill Gates, absolute genius, I have no interest in being in the gym. But I do genuinely think, and you know, people can turn around and go, but maybe Bill Gates didn't train all his life. I've no idea if he did or not. And they might go, no, but maybe if you dedicated all your time to entrepreneurship and you didn't exercise, you would be better. But I feel that's flawed. I think if you look across the board at successful people the world over, one of the biggest things that they have in common, no matter what, is that they exercise regularly and they look after themselves.
Yeah, it's true. And even going back to the likes of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, the real old philosophers, the ones who kind of built a lot of the foundations for our society today and for the way people like philosophical way of looking at life and how to live. I can't think I don't know if it was Marcus Aurelius. I don't want to credit it to him because I feel that it was actually somebody else who said, without a man can't test himself without knowing the limitations of his body, or without, do you know the quote that I'm trying to get to?
I don't actually know the quote, so I won't have a crack at it.
Yeah,
but I know there's I know that back in those more ancient times, like physical health and performance and like being strong and fit and muscular was like it was a no-go. You had to do it. It was non-negotiable. Like if you were anyone worth your salt, you had to look after yourself physically and mentally. And like again, it comes back to survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
You know, like survival of the fittest now is different to what it was thousands of years ago, but it literally was survival of the fittest. Like, who outran the saber-toothed tiger?
Yeah.
The guy who was in great shape with the six-pack, or the guy who sat, I don't know what they ate back then, but eating takeaway worms all day, you know?
Yeah.
Who survived?
That's it. Like, it does come back to that. I think what I'll do, just because I don't want to butcher it completely, I won't mention the quote, but the quote, to paraphrase it, is basically, a man doesn't know a test of himself until he knows the limitations of his body. It's like, it's a sorry life to go through without actually testing your body, without testing the physical, because you will have enough time to test the psychological. You'll have enough time to test the social. That's
going to be tested, whether you like it or not. The psychological is going to be tested.
Massively. But I think going on from that, going back to, like, let's say, I don't want to use the word role models, but people that you would look up to. One guy who I think is a very interesting allure to him now, and I used to be more into him than I am at the moment, would be the likes of Joe Rogan, who runs a successful podcast. He's been successful in a couple of different things, and I can see why obviously his audience is male dominated, but I can see why he would be a guy that a lot of people look up to, because he's involved in MMA, so he's good at survival. He's able to handle himself. He's a family man at the same time. He has a couple of kids that he's married. He is successful in a podcast, talking to lots of different people. He's successful as a commentator. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So that's one of the big things for me looking at him.
Comedian. He's a successful comedian.
Successful comedian. Yeah, he has, and he's in physical shape. His physical shape is unbelievable. I think that's a massive. That's a huge testament to the fact that he's probably the number 1, number 2 podcast in the world at the moment. He's probably
probably number 1. Surely, is there anyone bigger than Joe Rogan?
I honestly think that there is, because you see
the mobility experiment.
Maybe we're actually changing the mobility experiment to rebalance soon enough.
Rebalance, okay.
That's the new name of it. Yeah. So after Christmas, that's the new one.
Watch out, Joe.
You heard it here first. Watch out, Joe. Yeah, coming for you.
I think he's got to be the biggest in the world, man. Surely.
But see, in our zone,
of course,
of what we know,
the Western world.
Yeah, no, but even of what we know, like in terms of like male, male figures, like
true.
There's females as well that watch other ones that don't.
Of course, there is a lot of sections. I guess in a sense, we all live in our own little worlds, like, don't we?
I actually think Jay Shetty. Was the number 1 for a long time. I don't know if he still is, and he has a very interesting podcast, but he probably appeals a lot more to a female audience as well as a male audience. But Joe Rogan, not as much a female audience, which is 50% of the world, so you have to take that into it. I think anyway, going back to the point, I think that looking at him, you can see why he's so successful with what he's doing, why he has such a following, is because he does walk the walk.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we all need to look at ourselves. And when I look at myself now, and I look at myself in 15 or 20 years, I hope to have kids in 15 or 20 years, and I hope to be the person when I am at that age that they look up to. Do you know?
For sure.
I hope to be the person that they can say, I would like to be like that person, or I'd like to be like my father. I think for me anyway. Now that's selfish, but I think that is something that does push me to try to achieve more where I am at the moment.
For sure.
Honestly, I think that's a big one for me. But yeah, that's kind of the point that I was getting to, is that you do look at the people, you do look at your people that you are role models, people that you look up to, people that really have charisma or something that you, because I think the definition of charisma, or one definition for charisma, is it's like an unmeasurable attraction.
Really?
Yeah.
That's an interesting definition. It sounds right though. It sounds, charisma, because if someone asked me to describe charisma, I'd have to think about it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be able to just go, it's this. It's like
he's a charismatic person.
Energy or an air. It's an air someone has, right?
Yeah, like if he's a charismatic person, like I know a lot of charismatic people, but what can you pick out? Like, he's happy. Yeah, but like a lot of people are happy.
Yeah. What I love about Joe, I'm sorry to jump in, but what I love about Joe is that, like, everyone he sits down with, he doesn't go in with an agenda.
Yeah.
He doesn't go in to get a certain answer. And I think the format of his podcast being like 2, 3, even sometimes more, I think, hours long, is come in, chill out. Okay, like Elon Musk smokes a joint in the podcast, they drink a glass of whiskey. When we were setting up the podcast here, we were trying to make a nice kind of setup where we can actually sit and have a thoughtful discussion. And we've both done so many Zoom podcasts, and this is kind of off point, but I'm so glad that we're doing this in person, because we've both done multiple Zoom podcasts with other people, and I've actually stopped producing Zoom podcasts because I haven't released a podcast in months and months and months, and the reason is that I'm not going to release it and start working on the podcast again until I can actually commit to doing it with a proper setup and actually meeting with people in person like we're doing today. But I feel that Joe is so open when he does that.
Yeah.
And he's friendly, even if he disagrees with you. He's a decent guy. He doesn't shut you down. He doesn't try and make a fool of you. I know he's had some interactions on his podcast where, people maybe said things and they went a bit overboard, and he's kind of given them some pushback. But he's an interviewer who's not scared to push people back. But he's also a genuinely nice and decent guy to people on his podcast, and he gives people an opportunity to speak, which I think is a good thing.
To speak their truth.
Yeah,
because
which I think is a good thing.
I think that, like what we mentioned there earlier on, when we were talking about like the number 1 podcast in the world, it's very difficult, like, because you only know your lane.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very hard to look outside your lane in a lot of ways, and I think that sometimes the ego probably takes over a small bit and does that. It makes you focus on just what you need to focus on. Like for me, for the people around me, a lot of the time, for the last while, I've just talked about jiu-jitsu, you know, and business. And I think that's why the people that you keep around you a lot of the time are in line with the way you think and in line with your values. Like me and Dobbs have been friends since
I think 16 years.
Yeah, geez, that's a long time. Is it that?
Maybe, yeah. 20, 16.
7, yeah.
I think 16 years.
Jeez, that's a long time.
I'm 28 now, so.
Yeah, but it was 2007.
2007. Okay, so what are we now? 15 years, 22, 23, 16 years next year.
Nice, that's good.
So
nice.
We're clocking up mileage.
But along the way, there's a lot of people that we were acquainted with and people that that drop off because at a certain time you might be good friends with them because you have the same values and something. But as life goes on, you notice that they might be going a small bit of a different direction, and I think it's difficult sometimes to have to, not that you have to cut the ties, but to have to change focus. They cut themselves. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, I've had so many good friends in the past who we've just drifted apart. Yeah. Like I've rarely fallen out with a friend. If I've had no major fallouts with friends.
Yeah, same. I could say.
But I've drifted away from a lot of friends over the years, and nothing to do with the person, but just life. You know, they took one path, I took another, and you can only hold down so many proper friendships. Yeah. Like, at what point do you can't give all your time, or for everyone who I would like to be friends with. I wouldn't have enough hours in the day, even if I was to call them once a month, all the cool people I've met over the years, that would still be my whole month. Yeah. Gone, so like, I guess, it definitely comes down to being in the same lane. Like me and you are in the same lane in so many things.
Yeah.
But I do feel that even now, because we've been friends for so long and because we stay in contact all the time, even if our lanes separated, we would still make the effort to stay in touch.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's people who you're not as close with, and I think when your lanes kind of go separate ways, or you just end up doing different things, the effort is just not there on either side. And there's lots of people, and I don't feel guilty either, because of all the people who I would have been friends with throughout the years and we went on different paths, I didn't make the effort. But neither did that person, and I wouldn't expect them to. Like the people who made the effort, it's like reciprocal. So myself and yourself, even though there was different years, where we were in different countries or we were in different locations and we didn't see each other much, there was always communication, there was always contact, there was always an effort on both sides to keep in touch. You know, and obviously now, it's brilliant that we get to do stuff like this together. Yeah. Where we can actually do stuff, we're on the same path and we can do stuff together, which is just incredible. And I think that's, I feel like me and you are pretty safe in the regard that we very much see the world through the same eyes.
Different opinions on things but have the same principles.
Yeah.
The same values.
On a general kind of, I think on a general level, we see, I guess even the working for yourself puts you in quite a small percentage of the population. Like that's a big split, because the majority, I don't know the percentages, but the majority of people work a job. Yeah. When you work for yourself, I think you become someone who is more likely to take risk. You see the world through different eyes. You become kind of more independent. You probably travel more. Like, I think it's fair to say that people who work for themselves may get the opportunity to travel more, especially nowadays with online work. Back in the day, not so much.
I was going to say online work specifically.
So first of all, we're in this little bracket of people who are working for themselves. But then we're in a smaller bracket within that, where we're people who are working for themselves online. Yeah. And then there's an even smaller bracket, online, related to health and fitness and wellness. Yeah. So the brackets keep getting smaller. So I think, although we'll have different opinions on probably hundreds and thousands of things if we went through enough topics, generally we see the world through the same kind of viewpoint. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And as you said, I suppose we're aligned in a lot of ways to a very specific niche. Even like I know it's like health and fitness is a huge niche, but it is still a niche in itself. And you look at like health and fitness. There's like tech. There's like mechanics. There's so many different ones, and I think it is important to look at the friends around you and figure out where. Because if I started to talk to Dobbs here just about jiu-jitsu all the time, like it would become a very stale
I'd probably start jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Yeah, you start jiu-jitsu, it becomes a very stale conversation. So it's nice to have those other things to chat about. But one thing I wanted to get into now, and I don't want to go on too much longer, so we might have to leave it till the next podcast, is at what level of what we talked about earlier on, and what we talked about Joe Rogan and him being like a big male figure, at what level does that become a toxic masculinity to you?
Oh, wow, this is like
you have 4 minutes.
I have 4 minutes. God. I don't know. I mean, look, I'm probably completely unqualified to talk on this, but I think that the whole toxic masculinity thing, I definitely agree that there is toxic behavior in the world, but I don't think I don't fully even understand the concept of toxic masculinity. Like, in my understanding, masculine traits are like being so wanting to be a provider. I can only speak right for me as a guy. If I go out on a date with a girl, I don't want her paying for the dinner.
Yeah.
I don't want to split the bill. I want to pay the bill, and I guess that's something masculine, where it's like, you want to show that you're able to provide or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not. I don't see anything toxic about that. In terms of like, okay, I won't lie. I want to have a lot of money. I want to be extremely rich and wealthy. But that's not so that I can exert power over people per se. It's so that I can be in a position where I can have my time back and I can, live the life that I want in alignment with my values and do good by the people around me and do good for causes that I care about. I want some level of power.
Yeah.
Again, people will look at power and go, toxic. I don't think so, personally.
I prefer to be up here than down at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, right? Because, I mean, if you really want to make big change in the world, throwing your €5 to Troca every month, that doesn't make a huge change. Whereas if you're somebody who's worth an awful lot of money and you genuinely want to do good, you can genuinely do good. You can build health centres, you can build farming centres, whatever. Like, I'm just using the Troca example. Like, and that's not to shit on someone who can afford that and does it. But I feel that, like, to be in a position of power, you can help more. No doubt there is like
corruption.
There is corruption, and there is, of course, like inequality. But I think there's inequality in everything. It's not just like a masculine thing either. I think there's inequality to like different races. There's inequality to all sorts of things. I don't really understand the whole toxic masculinity argument. I think that there are toxic people and toxic behaviors, but I generally think masculine traits are a good thing, and I think being protective, to a certain extent, not being a fucking psycho, sorry for my language, but being protective and wanting to provide and wanting to be powerful and wanting to be powerful in a sense of being able to influence and improve other people's lives because of your resources or whatever. Wanting to have fast cars and boys will be boys. That's me. Like, I want to do fast. I won't lie. I want to do fast, dangerous shit. Probably a little bit foolish and stupid. But I don't see what's
wrong with
that. I think toxic and masculine are completely different things, and that's my personal opinion. I've probably used my 4 minutes, but there you go.
No, I think it's a very interesting way of looking at it. The reason I say it is because it's a topic of conversation that's cropping up around, and I will have to. It's better to be the one asking the questions than having to answer them in a lot of cases, especially that type of question.
I do feel we could talk about that for an hour and a half on its own.
I think so as well.
And I've kind of thrown out an answer there without really having time to think about it. And kind of just my views, but I'd be happy to talk about that at a further point on an actual podcast dedicated to that, because it is a hot topic, and I do feel that guys get a lot of shit you know,
For
when
that
they
stuff, yeah.
try and get ahead in life and they show some masculine traits to get there. You know, and I do feel it is quite difficult being a guy, and I see that for a lot of guys that I work with, where, you know, society is not making it easy for them. So
Yeah, and I suppose that kind of brings up to the point of why a lot of these, like the likes of Andrew Tate, the likes of those guys are becoming bigger because they speak against that. But it's the reason I just threw it out there is because first off, it's a step up that we can do in another podcast and we can look into it a small bit more and have a thing. But the answer that you gave there, I would agree as well with it. I think that once you don't go to the extremes of anything, I think, but that's across the board. I think that's across the board. The extremes are generally a lot of the time the problem with people. So like extremely protective, where you're just staring at people in the gym and getting angry at people in the gym, or you're getting angry at people on the street because they attack your ego. Like that side.
I think that's insecurity as well, though, right?
Insecurity, yeah. So I think there's an element of it that goes to that. But I wanted to bring it up because it was a topic that I had recently had when I was in Valencia. It was a discussion that I had with people, and I would say that they were left leaning, like woke left, like let's say, because I would say that, not to discuss political views or anything like that, but I would say that I would be, I think, probably left leaning. I think that I'd be more open to, right now in my life, I would have definitely conservative views as well, or right side, but in general, I think that looking for equality across the board and making sure everyone has equality is important, and I think that's that's obviously primary at the moment because we have all our basic needs met in general for the Western world anyway. But I think that you need to watch that you don't shit on other people, and you're not trying to hold someone else back because of your views.
For sure.
And I think that's why sometimes when you talk about toxic masculinity, it's very hard to make an argument for masculinity because then it feels like you're affecting women.
I do feel in my small experience of it that it just basically means that if you do anything masculine, you're toxic and you're part of a big problem. But I do think that that's only a small
percentage of people that think that way.
Because I know a lot of girls who, you know, have said, like, that's dumb. Like, I do want I do want somebody who has masculine traits, and you know, I think that's, you know, we've seen that has been
part of the attraction. Yeah, but I just
for sure.
I just think it's once you're not holding someone else back, and you're actually helping everyone else on. I think that it's a very hard argument to make that you're being you have toxic masculinity, or it's a very hard argument to say that someone is a complete feminist. As long as they're helping other people on, I think that's the most important thing, and that's what we do as coaches. Like, that's something that we try to do, is try to get people to where they are.
And I need to balance that always, because I have people from all different walks of life, and I need to make sure that, you know, like, my views are not impressing on anyone else's views. And again, I think like that we could spend an hour and a half talking about that, but I do feel that life is difficult for everybody, to be honest, and you know, it's difficult for young males. That's just one thing that's difficult for them. I do feel that a lot of my success, you know, success to me at least, what has worked well for me in life, has been kind of maybe due to some masculine traits of being a bit fucking pig-headed and, you know, wanting to be kind of better than people, and whatever those other traits are. But I think that so long as you are good to other people and you're a decent person, I guess I'm slightly traditional in my values as well, and I don't see any problem with that so long as you treat people well and your views or values don't make someone else's life worse. You know, they should make someone else's life better.
No, I think that's a perfect one to finish on, man. I think you hit all the right points there, and to not go into it too much deeper, like, because I think we just covered the basics of it. And like, the other thing is I'm not married to any of my beliefs either, so my beliefs do change all the time, and they chop and change. Like, I would have said when I was in college that I would have been completely one side, and now I'm kind of changing over. And once you get different opinions, I think you don't want to label yourself either with what way you think, because obviously once you put a label on it, it's very difficult to come out of it. But
well, that's it. And I feel like that's an extremely deep question and topic that, well, number one, I don't know as much about, like, I don't know as much as I'd like about both the two sides. And I probably have to do some more kind of thinking on it, and some more also research, and like you said, more opinions, more life experiences. Like, these things do change over time. But yeah, that's where I'm at on it at the moment. Yeah,
so I suppose thanks a million for jumping on today, Labs. You're the man.
No worries.
Coming down.
I only
texted him last night for anyone that was wondering, and he said I'll be down in the morning. So excellent. I really appreciate that. Really good conversation. Delighted that we were able to get it on camera as well. But I think that is all from us today.
For sure.
So where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram at Eoin Dobbin Catto, EoinDobbinCatto, or at Eoin Dobbin Official on Instagram. Depends what you want to find me for. If it's something health and fitness related, the first one. If it's something entrepreneurial related, the second one. Those are the best places to get me.
Nice.
Probably find me on LinkedIn, Facebook,
Everywhere
all over
else.
the place as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, if you could Google my name, you'll find me.
It'll come up. But that's all from us today, guys. Thank you so much for listening again. Hopefully you enjoyed the video content, as we'll be looking to get more of this in the next couple of weeks and couple of months. But I will chat to you all again next week. Have a good one.